Everyone, we are here with Dale Fabrigar. He is the director of a new film called It Crawls Beneath. And we're very excited it's a cool creature feature, and we're excited to talk to you, Dale. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, can you give us a little bit of an idea of what It Crawls Beneath is about?
It's a creature feature, and it's about a young man who gets trapped in a garage after an earthquake. A car falls on him, and he gets trapped there and can't escape. And through the cracks and the fissures of the earth emerge these scary creatures, let's just say. And he has to fight for his survival. And it basically takes place over one night, and it's a single location type of thing. But yeah, that's a story. Whether he lives or dies, and who he lives for, that's what we wait to find out.
Excellent.
What are these things? Yeah.
Well, I think what interests me most about this is, like you said, the single location. Um, but it feels like an action creature feature movie that was kind of optimized for budget.
Yes. Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
and I think that was a very clever way to do that. How
Mm.
how did Trisha Arand Arand
Wrote. Yep, she
wrote it.
wrote it.
Now,
Yeah.
how did you come in contact with the script? What were your first impressions when you read?
Well, the way the project actually happened is Suzanne De Laurentiis, my producing partner. We've been making a lot of fun movies, from Christmas movies to dramas to anything. We just love stories, but we really, our heart is with suspense thrillers and horror. That's where she came from, and we started our relationship working on those types of projects, and we've just somehow stuck together. But she had this idea. She saw a film a few years back called Buried with
Mhm.
Ryan Reynolds,
Yeah.
where he was trapped in this right box. And she said, "Why can't we make a movie like that?" First of all, I said, "That's a tough one. I mean, to carry a movie in one location was incredibly challenging. I mean, and that movie had Ryan Reynolds, incredibly charming and charismatic, and a star that you really cared for. Anyway, so she was, that was the seed that she wanted to sprout from. But of course, she said, but it's not just in one place, because I said we're not gonna be able to sell that movie. It's gonna be so hard. We don't have Ryan Reynolds. No one's gonna care. But yeah, we wanted to add our creature feature vibe and fun to it, and that's how it all came about. We then met with Neil and Kevin Getz, with Steve Horniak, and then we started developing. I also enlisted the help of Jose Montesinos, who's a director and producer himself, and he kind of helped with the story, with the script. We Trisha then wrote this thing, and then we had to then tailor it to what we could afford and where we can do it. And there you have it. There's our movie, basically. But I knew going into it, yeah, it was going to be single location and rather a simple story. But I knew that we had done some other creature features before, and what really we enjoyed and what I loved the most was the monsters or the creatures themselves. And I knew going into, specifically for this one, this had to be a practical creature effect for me anyway. There's a lot of
Thank
great,
you.
there's a lot, yeah, there's a lot of great CG stuff out there, but I just knew that this had to be, a practical solution. And that was a challenge, because I didn't want it to be whatever, something cheap. Although we had a limited budget, but anyway, we were able to, come up with something that I thought worked.
Right. Now, do you want to weigh in on why you chose practical as opposed to CGI?
Well, there's something about an organic creature. It's like the actor itself. Strangely, you have, at least at our budget, in our realm, we can control it a little
Sure.
more, and also we can see it. And I always am one that I love practical locations as opposed to green screen backgrounds. I mean, that's how everything's done these days. You know,
Mm,
it's really difficult and a challenge for actors. I just love being in a real garage or being in a real hotel room or a, you can feel it, you can smell it, and and the actors can, it's just faster, to access that moment in time. And then when you have these creatures that you can actually see, then you can really get a sense of, it really helps play and on their emotion and the way they can react. It's just much more organically authentic. And,
mhm.
and for me, you can tell. I can, again, there's some amazing CG work in movies, but I mean, I don't know what it is. If I could do everything practical, I would. So that was really hard, and that was my desire. And I knew we only had a little bit of money. And she said, "Well, who can do this?" And I said, "Well, I follow a lot of effects folks."
Mhm.
And I said, "Well, there's this guy. I needed to look at least this good." And she saw this Instagram post of this guy had been following this artist, and that was Dan Rebert, amazing creature designer. And I had seen a film that he did, which was, I mean, he worked on Slither, and he might even worked on Tremors, but he goes way back.
Okay.
But he did a film which was called Itsy Bitsy with spiders, and the
Oh,
work in
wow.
that was fantastic. And I said, I need someone like that. I didn't think we would even get him. She saw it, and we were cutting a Christmas movie at the time during just COVID
Yeah.
starting. And then she said, I'm going to call him. I went, what? What? And I was in the editing room. Literally, she says, I'm going to call him. She did some research, looked him up, called him on the phone. And I guess, the town was dead during that time. I mean, no pun intended. I mean, there's nothing going on. and and it was slow. And he just signed on and said, I'll do it,
Wow.
and we had a great time. It wasn't easy though, let me tell you. But to work with him was really a gift. I mean, his talents and everything just really went a long way to just create what we needed. And my vision for the creature was entirely different, but we can only do what we can with the budget. But just to have him do it was pretty badass. It was a lot of fun.
That's amazing. And another thing that really fascinates me about helming a single location film like this is the the techniques you use in order to make it feel not so claustrophobic. Now, what are some of the techniques that you utilize to kind of expand the space uh, within the film?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of approaches. One, it's a visual thing. Film is visual, right? And we could have chosen to, I could have decided that I really want to shoot it all tight. And then that will then add to this uncomfortable claustrophobicness of the film, right? But I mean, I just didn't want it to feel that uncomfortable, and that was a choice. Plus, the film does kind of break out of those spaces because we needed to breathe.
Mm,
Our film just, again, we had some great actors, but it's not Ryan Reynolds. How can we keep our audience interested and still in that room with us, as opposed to just turning off. Of course, we've got the creatures you're hoping to see and see more of throughout and get unveiled, and we want to see what's going to happen. But I think for me, it was just a matter of it's a technical. It's just a matter of mixing up shot selection, and
mm,
figuring out that it's not the same angle every time. That's what I did my best to try to do with what we had. Is we were trying to mix it up. Obviously, there's only so many angles, which we found out and discovered so quickly. Is, oh, we've already been there. I said, I want to go here, but when you're there, you also get the geography of the room or the
mm,
place, but you want to mix it. It's not just all close-ups. It's not all, so that's how I decided to do it. Back up, let's see the world, let's go back in, it's intense, and just sort of mix it up that way. And it kind of helps, not feel so tight the entire time. But by virtue of not getting out of that place much, you're gonna feel it. But we did, we knew early on in a rough cut that we knew we had to also break out of that. So we have some scenes for other characters talking, and just so they can breathe and come back to his situation or
mm.
whatnot. That was all by design. Maybe we could have been bolder and did it 100% in there, which was originally the idea. But it had through development, they decided, I think we need to kind of break out a little bit. But yeah, I think it's just the way you block it and move the camera and where you put the camera. That just really kind of helps it keep it interesting. Yet where you're at, you know.
Yeah. And you mentioned COVID, and how did the pandemic affect production?
Yeah, it was tough in pre-production and in the very beginning it was really tough because we had a cinematographer, our original cinematographer, who's really talented, and we were looking forward to doing this movie, who had been on with us through a bit of the prep, and again, there's not a lot of money, so everything moves quickly. However, then unfortunately that you know our DP caught COVID, and
Oh,
we were scrambling. That was like a week or two before we were going into production. And this is kind of early on when we didn't understand, it was a scary thing.
yeah. Yeah.
And so um, some might have said that, he would have been fine. We just, the producers, I was fine with like, let's stick it out, let's push, let's wait. But the producers, like, the decision was made that we need to, it was probably safer to kind of get someone else
Yeah.
and all that. So that was actually a very difficult um, process and time to do, and it really hurt
Yeah.
to replace my DP. That really
Yeah.
sucked. However, we ended up meeting and being introduced to another DP, and that was Maricela. And she just jumped on like 2 days before we went into production. 2 days.
Wow.
I mean, we had a ton of calls. And then after that, it was just constant phone calls, email, like just getting her up to speed and to say she's it. And she just really kicked butt for us. And she was really awesome, just so awesome. And I look forward to working with her again. But yeah, that whole thing, that really hurt in the beginning. And of course, we had to be super careful. And I was okay with a mask, working with people,
Sure.
but it just makes it difficult, and we're in a room in a, in a garage, and then you have a mask, and it's just like, I can't breathe. I got to get out of here. But yeah, that was the challenge. And we're always constantly testing, and you're always nervous, that layered with just the
Yeah. That
complexity of
level of
producing a film.
anxiety, and yeah.
Totally. Especially during that time. I think today, some people still wear masks, people still nervous, but it's just a totally different thing now.
Well,
Thank
there's a
goodness.
lot more, well, hindsight, of course, but
Yes.
there's also a greater understanding of what it is
Right.
and what you're
Right.
dealing with and what the parameters are, and
True.
so yeah. Well, but you made the movie
Yes.
and you survived.
We
It seemed.
survived.
Um,
Yes.
and is there any sort of advice you might want to give other indie filmmakers that you took from this film?
Well, that garage there was no garage. We made that garage, which I have to give kudos to Jacob, Guyton, and his little team to create it. You gotta, some would look at that and say, how would you make that movie with that little money? How can you get this done? I don't think that's possible. And we were told that it's something you shouldn't probably do. But you just have to, I always say to other, especially as developing and upcoming filmmakers that are just trying to get going, I always say yes. Just work as much as you can, make and create. Because through that process, you're going to meet other people, you're going to learn a lot, and you're going to be forced to troubleshoot. That's really what directing is. Obviously, there's a vision, but it's just a daily. Some people call us traffic cops. We're just directing
Mm,
traffic, and I only do this because you just execute. But there's always creative challenges, and then what's really cool is there's always those new ideas that sprout from the moment that you're
mm,
there. And you got to be. I also say, stay curious and creative. Stay inspired for other filmmakers, and be flexible, because you're going to see something and you think, but that wasn't written like that. Let's not do it. No, you're like, hey, let's go for it. And
mm,
sometimes those moments, and there are many of them that come out of nowhere, or from unexpected moments that the actor brings to you. By the way, props to our amazing actor, Joseph Almani and Carly and Michael Pere, and those guys just stay, especially Joseph, who stayed underneath that car and in that position for as long as he did, and he was just so committed and all that. But yeah, I mean, you just have to create it and just make it. And we made the garage, we made that garage was actually like not the same garage. There were 4 different garages that we had to make look and feel like one because we couldn't do everything in one
Oh,
garage.
wow.
Yeah, so I hope that doesn't ruin it for everybody. I hope you've seen the movie by the time you see this interview or whatnot. But yeah, so that was fun challenge to kind of make that work, within our budget. And you might see a little bit of, that might show a little bit, but in the end, it's still a fun, cool movie, and I love the characters in it, and the creatures are pretty awesome.
That's awesome.
I hope
Well,
I answered your question.
no,
Yeah.
you did. You did. It's about staying inspired and feeding creativity for others.
Yeah. And be prepared.
Oh,
Be
that's the
You
one.
cannot be overly prepared, because that's what was good is when we stressed and we couldn't find who the DP was. I was ready. When we found that person, I had all this stuff to. We're here. We're gonna go here. We're gonna do that. This is what it's gonna be. A lot of times there isn't a lot of time to prepare. It feels that way. Like, oh, you're just gonna wing it because I've done this before. I know how to do this or whatnot. But filmmaking is, although there's that organic moment and truth that we're always trying to capture, it's very technical, and there's other departments that need to know what's going on, and that's part of the fun, I think, of making movies, and working with them. And you just got to be prepared, get everyone ready, so that when it comes time, you just do it, and it ain't going to be the same way like you planned it. But you're ready to pivot, you're ready to do this and that. And that's what I think is the joy of it. And when it's all done, if it can kind of work, you know
Awesome.
there's a lot of joy and happiness for that. So hopefully people see the movie and it finds a place, and and people enjoy it.
Excellent. Well, when does it come out again?
I think it's coming out in a couple of weeks. I thought it was the 6th or 8th. Now I hear it's like the 11th, but there've been some DVDs that have actually been sold. I saw some that were floating out there already. I was like, oh, I don't even have a copy of it. So can I get one? But yeah, it's in October. That's when it's officially being released.
Excellent.
And we were really lucky. We got distribution rather quickly. People were excited about it. Fingers crossed. We hope it finds a place in an audience. The fans of Tremors and Slither, and the people that love practical effects like The Thing. That was my hero movie. That's my favorite movie. I mean, it's nothing like that. The budget is nothing like that, but just sort of that spirit and enjoyment that you can feel it. It's it comes from there. And hopefully we can do bigger and better things in the future. So yeah.
Well, I'm sure it'll happen. So
Yeah, thanks, Norm.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dale, best of luck on this release. Um, They Crawl Beneath is coming out in October.
Yep, and just a few more weeks, I think. So yeah, look out.
It Crawls Beneath. Forgive me, I messed up the title. It Crawls Beneath.
Well, it went through a ton of different title names too.
Really?
Because we had this one, and then it changed. Then this one, someone already has it. Oh, But yeah, They Crawl Beneath, coming soon.
There we go. Dale,
Right.
It was a pleasure. Best of luck on this release.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for the time and having me. Thank you.
Yep. You take care.
All right.